One of the nice things to notice is there are some people here who are older than me, which is not very common in a business school. So some of you might remember this movie Chalti Ka Naam Gaadi. Does anybody remember? Yeah. Okay. So I'm trying to define quality in those terms. So Chalti Ka Naam Gaadi to Rukti Ka kya naam hona chahiye? That's really the key question. So when we talk about quality, we talk about quality of products, we talk about quality of services, and you've seen all these competing teams who save their companies lots of money. But can we push that? If we can save 70 lakhs per team, can we save 70 crores? Can we save 700 crores? So that's the question that I'm trying to address. Maybe I don't have the perfect solution, but that's really the question. So quality has value, and Mr. Trehan demonstrated that very ably, or actually the teams demonstrated that very ably by saying, okay, 69 crores, 70 crores, lakhs per team. So why don't we take that and expand it further into, so all these teams would have worked in a certain department in a company. Well, what about across functions? What about across companies on one side? And as you do that, you get competitive advantage, which is the thing that I'm after. How do you get competitive advantage through quality of flow? So rather than looking for quality in one department, we can look for quality across departments, across companies. This is a diagram. Many of you may have seen value chain diagram, and I'm sure in your own companies you have different versions of this diagram or supply chain and other things. So that's where I'd like you to think about quality. I don't have the answers, but I'd like you to think about quality in a more expanded set than what you've already very ably demonstrated. So there are many different views on quality. First of all, Mr. Trehan, the presentation you saw about Gyan Jyoti earlier, they said started with Duran's view of quality, and certainly there are many other views. But the focus is typically on a product, and if there is a product, then we say let's look at the process behind making that product, and if we fix that process, then the product will be fine too. So in that sense, there is a focus on the product. And we talk about an internal view of quality where the engineering department will say, well, this is not to spec. This diameter should be 10 centimeter plus minus 5 microns, then it's out of spec or in spec. And there are external views of quality where a customer says they don't like the product. It may be 10 centimeters plus minus 5 microns, but they just don't like the look of the product. And that's an external view of quality. Then we can talk about an expectation versus delivery gap. So I'm sure some of the teams that participated today on the service side would be quite familiar with this expectation gap. So again, like I said, this is only a subset. There are different and many views on quality. But what I'm saying is if we look at the entire value chain, this view may not be enough. First of all, when you talk about a supply chain, for instance, we may not always have a clear notion of a product. Because you may be selling a product, but there is also services you give to your end customer along with the product. Returns, how do you handle returns, for instance? And then when you do your Lean or Six Sigma projects or Lean Six Sigma projects, you have a nice definition of a process. Or you come up with a box and you say, this is the process, this is in scope, this is out scope. When you talk about a value chain, that kind of boundary is very hard to make. Third, the problem with any chain is the weakest link. I'll give you a very good example. 4 days ago, I drove from Delhi to Chandigarh to come here. Well, obviously there is a very nice road, yeah, very high speed. But once in a while you have speed bumps. I don't know why, but they are there. I don't know what purpose they serve, but they are speed bumps. Or there are sheep crossing on the side. I've never seen sheep on that road before. This is new. So there's sheep, or there's people crossing, or there's an accident. So even though I calculated the distance is about 250 kilometers, and I was driving illegally around 120, so I should have been, and I did get caught by a policeman on the way, by the way. I should have been here in 2 hours, 2.5, but actually it took 6 hours. So the problem with any chain is the weakest link. So we can improve quality in many parts of the company, but it doesn't really matter, because eventually what matters is where you are held up. If the road between Delhi and Chandigarh is really polished in most parts, but not in all parts, then the speed is not going to change, and I'll still take 6 hours to come to Chandigarh. So that's C. And D is, it's very hard to say in a value chain who's internal and who's external. So how do we say who's the internal customer, we are all partners, and it's our supply chain competing with somebody else's supply chain. So again, this notion of external view, internal view of quality, it may be inadequate when we talk about the whole value chain. So this is my, these are my questions, rather than I can't say I have solutions. If we talk about the entire flow, so first of all, are the flows synchronized? If somebody who's leaving Delhi, if that person is driving at 60 kilometers an hour, and somebody who's just crossing Ambala is also driving 60 kilometers an hour, and somebody who's crossing Shahbad is also 60 kilometers an hour, then the whole traffic from Delhi to Chandigarh is moving like a flow. It would be synchronized. Obviously it's not. There are parts where people like me going 120, and then there are parts where you're stuck for half an hour at 0 kilometers an hour. So synchronization of the entire flow. Of course we've seen that with JIT and Kanban, so that's part of this. Second, are the flows delayed anywhere? So transportation infrastructure is a big bottleneck. When I took up the job with ISP last year, the first place I visited was Ludhiana at the CII chapter, and I mean the meeting with the industrialists was very enlightening, but what was more enlightening was the motion of traffic in Ludhiana. This is a very industrial region, and we saw about 10 unbuilt bridges. I don't know what an unbuilt bridge does, what value an unbuilt bridge serves, but obviously all it does is create delays for even the regular traffic. And also delays in payment. One of the things is SMEs, they don't get their money quickly. So if money is not flowing at the same 60 kilometers an hour, then the supply chain or the value chain will also not work. So delays in payment are also part of that flow delay. Are the flows disrupted? Last year we had strikes at Maruti in the NCR region, and every newspaper, I live most of the time in London, even there it was always news that Maruti strike at different stages. It was such big news because Maruti is an industrial powerhouse, and any strike there seems to impact the whole country. And finally, are there leaks? Just like you have water pipe, if it has leaks, that means you are losing productive flow somewhere. That leak could come from loss of shipment. In Europe, for example, right now, one of the problems is people, when a driver is asleep, a truck driver is asleep on the road, somebody will come, put some gas in his cabin, the driver goes to sleep, and then all the goods, which sometimes can be electronic goods worth millions of dollars, or chips or whatever, disappear. So, well, that's a huge, and companies don't like to report it. So it doesn't come out. Loss of intellectual property, that's a big leak by itself. Leakage of profits because your salespeople are giving excessive discounts. So that's also leaks, right? So that's also a flow problem. So I'll give examples of 3 different kinds of chains. When I say value chain, I use it very amorphously. So one is supply chain. My area of research is supply chain, and within supply chain we talk about 3 things: the flow of materials, from raw material to work in process, finished goods, all the way to the customer. Even then there is the flow of information. So you send an order to your supplier, and the supplier gives you an update, and so on. From supplier to supplier to my own facilities, customer and customer's customer. And then the flow of money, because customer pays me, I pay my supplier, and of course, depending on what kind of terms there are, back in 2007, I was on some committee. We had to look at the then Prime Minister Gordon Brown's manufacturing policy. Just like now we have the national manufacturing policy here, that time the Gordon Brown administration was trying to make a national. And one of the things, so the minister there showed us a draft, and the first thing I had said is that there is no mention of money, flow of money anywhere. And if you remember, later that year, HSBC started having problems, and that was the beginning of the financial crisis. So in the UK and most of Western Europe, the problem that happened was not because manufacturing had any defects in itself. It was the flow of money that the banks stopped lending to SMEs, and suddenly the whole economy, and you can still see the economy in countries like Spain and Italy is in pretty bad shape. It wasn't because manufacturing, there was a quality problem in the products or whatever. It was just the block in the flow of money. So unless we are all flowing smoothly, money is flowing smoothly, information is flowing smoothly, materials are flowing smoothly, then we have problems, no matter how good the quality might be in individual departments. So rather than talk about quality of individual departments, I'm saying let's talk about the quality of the flow itself. So for example, these are 3 companies that are rated by their peers as the best supply chain companies in the world today: Apple, Dell, and Procter & Gamble. Then there is the flow of ideas. How well do ideas flow? I visited a company recently, Indian company, definitely world class and one of the best manufacturers anywhere in the world. But when I visited their top tier, the first tier suppliers, they said many suggestions that they give, those suggestions don't go anywhere. And then within the company, the head of R&D was saying, yes, even within the company, many ideas that come up don't go anywhere. So the company is a world-class company, but obviously it has challenges around the flow of ideas. How do you manage the flow of ideas? Which means from fundamental R&D to applied research and development, to product development, to marketing innovation, sales innovation, even how you dispose products, you need to figure out how to innovate. And Apple is, we always think of Apple as a very great company, but Apple is actually a second mover on most of the time. But their biggest thing was they looked at everything as a flow. So how do you distribute product? You go to a shop, buy the software, and then you struggle with all of how to install it. So they said, okay, let's have iTunes. Now iPad or Apple notebook, very easy to install software. Just click, because all the software is available via their App Store or iTunes or whatever. So not only are you buying the physical product, but all the services, everything comes as a flow. And that's why Apple is a great company, because it combined all those ideas which already existed together, but as a flow. And then if you look at the supply, the skills chain, how do you get, one of the things I noticed in NCR region, I visited many plants, so many machines were idle. So from me coming from outside, suddenly say, okay, 1.2 billion people, how can there be problems of not finding workers? And this is not very difficult work. I mean, it's difficult work if you're doing it 8 hours a day, but how come there are not enough workers? And so there's a flow required there too. There's junior school, you go to primary school, junior school, middle school, high school, colleges, on the job, and then postgraduate degrees. And obviously institutions like Gyan Jyoti, PTU play a very important role in that flow of skills across. And I think there we need to look at Germany a little bit closer rather than other countries. I visited Germany recently, and I looked there a long time ago. One of the things you notice immediately is the lack of poor people, because even the lowest paid job is quite high, and even the lowest paid job requires you to have a certain kind of certification and diploma. And all those jobs are highly paid. Nobody is extremely wealthy, but there are no poor people, and it's very clear. And also many of the companies are quite small companies, but they compete globally with anybody. And those small companies, Mittelstand, are what's driving, and Germany has big companies too, but it's those small companies that are driving the innovation, that are driving the power behind the big companies. So that's a country I think we should look at more closely. So finally, if we start thinking in terms of flow, we can go beyond absence of defects to, if something is flowing, then many people are better off, many stakeholders are better off, and no one is worse off. So if we think of customers, if we think of employees, if we think of suppliers, community, environment, investors, debt holders, all of those, when we think about flow across the value chain, we can think of which stakeholders will be better off without making other stakeholders worse off. And if you think about it, that's the true definition of quality. When we improve the quality of a product, then the end customer might be better off, but we are not necessarily worse off. The second, and that's what Juran saying, right? Quality is free because it doesn't cost the shareholders or the company's management much, but it improves the life of the customer. So if we generalize that definition to the entire value chain, I think then this could be something we can think about, how to make some stakeholders better off without making others worse off. The other point I want to make is all the investment in quality that you've already made, preparing for today's competition, and also, of course, the investment your companies, all those tools are tried and true. I mean, those tools go back to the 1920s. So those tools don't have to change. It's the area of application that I'm asking we can broaden without changing the tools. We can still have SPC on that side. We can still have Six Sigma and try to reduce the variation, and we can do the PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act. None of that investment is wasted. I'm not selling a new technology tool here, but what I'm trying to emphasize is that we need to broaden the application to something much beyond our immediate departments, or even beyond our immediate company. So I'll give you 3 examples, totally different kinds of examples. One is about making movies. I studied at UCLA, and in LA one of the biggest, but not the biggest, but one of the biggest industries, obviously Hollywood. And so a lot of movie making comes in. And in the movie making industry, you start out with many concepts, and then you start filtering them to workable concepts, and eventually you come up with pilots, and then you come out with a movie. And it's the same thing in pharmaceutical industry. You start out with something like 1,000 different molecules, and you test them through the computer and then physically, and eventually you may get one or none or no drugs at all. So that kind of a flow process. And then pricing itself, I'll talk more about that. So the flow of ideas, even within company, I told you the company I visited, world-class company, but their suppliers said they have problem of flow of ideas with the main company, and within the main company they said they have flow problems when it comes to ideas. So you have many possible candidates, and you have to have filtering processes. You can think of these as sales leads. You start with 100 sales leads, maybe 5 of them will turn into actual sales. Well, which 5 is the problem? You can't send baskets of kaju and barfi to all the 100 sales leads because it will get quite expensive. On the other hand, you can't just pick 5 randomly at the very beginning because those might be the non-buying customer. So it's the same idea of quality, type 1 error, type 2 error. And so that kind of filtering process is again a quality process. Actually, one of the movie moguls actually tried to create a process around filtering. He didn't make much money. This was the CEO of Columbia at one time. And the filters he put was that the movies should be socially relevant. And I think based on that, none of the movies that I've seen on TV here would fit the criteria. But anyway, he didn't make much money for his company. But he tried to view it as a process as a flow of ideas, which in the movie industry is very hard because everybody is a prima donna and they all think they are great, so they don't like even the word process. So for a CEO to try that was also quite interesting. The second one is work that I did with my younger brother. So it's about the flow of money, and what happens here is the leakage because salespeople give excessive discounts. And for business to consumer companies and small companies, it's not a big problem because the control of prices is centralized. But when you're a global company, and each country, each region, or within a large country like India, you have different regions, then it's not always possible to control the price of every transaction. So you may have supply chain quality or delivery quality, and then the salesperson may have to give a bigger discount. Or price approvals take too long, and then the salesperson commits to a price without asking for approval. Or people have, nowadays with computers, it's actually much easier to do things which you would not be able to get away earlier. So this was at a German company. We found that what the salespeople were doing, the company had a very good SAP system. So what the salespeople were doing is they were putting huge requests for, not huge quotes for their customers of all possible products. The customer would buy one or two products out of that quote list, but then it wouldn't expire. So 4 years, 5 years later, the salesperson could still give an old price, which was 5 years ago. So they could cheat the system that way. And then there are differences in prices across divisions and regions. So this is actual data. We looked at the invoices of a global company, and this is only North American part of that global company. So it's all the US and Canada. And you can see this is the price of one product, and these are the discounts. So it's hugely varying discounts, and obviously the company loses money. So we actually applied Six Sigma to pricing, and it was the first time it was done, because normally Six Sigma we apply to products or services. And then we looked at how to increase price realization. And we did the same way, just like you would do any Six Sigma project. You say price is out of tolerance, what's the process behind, how that price got to where it is. And part of the challenge there was people didn't like to think there was a process as such. Because manufacturing process, you can see, with pricing, it was first we had to convince the company there was a process. How did the price get to be what it is? There must have been some series of steps. Well, let's look at those. And then anyway, as a result of this small Six Sigma project, the company got 5.8 million additional profits after just 3 months, and very little effort on our part. But the point here is it was the flow of money we were looking at as opposed to the flow of product. So there's details. An Indian version of this book is available too. And finally, a simple example. I don't know how many of you have Sony Ericsson phones or Sony phones, but the story behind that is quite interesting, how it got to be. Ericsson and Nokia were the two dominant companies. So back in 2001, a small lightning bolt hit the wires, overhead wires, in this town called Albuquerque, which had a Philips plant, which was the sole source supplier to Nokia as well as Ericsson. So they had a small fire. It was just one small machine, and Philips called up Ericsson and Nokia and said, "Look, there's been a small fire. It'll take about a week to sort things out." And Ericsson thought, "Okay, we've got 2 weeks worth of chips in inventory. That's okay. We'll wait." Whereas what Nokia did, they redesigned their chip and then started buying chips from other companies within the same week. Well, Ericsson waited 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and eventually they couldn't sell product. After 4 months, after 1 quarter, they had already lost $400 million of revenues, and after 1 year, they had lost $1 billion, and they couldn't survive. So they went to Sony for a 50-50 joint venture. This was a machine this big that got fired. See, that triggered off all this. because the smoke came out and the fire alarms came out, and this was a clean room and they couldn't clean it for 6 months. So anyway, even with the 50-50 venture, it became Sony Ericsson rather than Ericsson Sony, because Sony was the dominant party. And then recently Sony acquired the rest of the company. So it was a very small disruption, very small fire, which didn't create any big problem except it created dust. And that dust in a clean room meant Philips could not produce any. Philips lost $40 million, so it wasn't a big deal for Philips, but Ericsson lost its entire consumer handset business. So disruptions are another thing, and that's my main focus area of research. And this book just came out last month, and an Indian version should be out later this month. Okay, before I conclude, I'll just quickly mention about MGMI, Munjal Global Manufacturing Institute, being set up at ISB. And that vision and our mission is thought leadership, which means ISB already has world-class scholars to create that, to work with industry to share knowledge and inform policy development. That means work with government and groom future leaders. And I was telling Mr. Trehan that our mission overlaps quite a bit with Gyan Jyoti PTO, so we expect to work with them closely. So in summary, this is what I said. If quality has value on the shop floor or in the service department, then certainly it must have value if you look at across all departments, and if you even look across companies in our value chain. That means our suppliers, our tier 1 suppliers, our customers' customers. And traditional values of quality focus on product, but we need to look at something much more when we think about the supply chain, the innovation chain, the skills chain, at the chain itself and the flow, rather than each part of it. When we say the whole is more than the sum of the parts, perhaps that's applicable here. And the tools of quality can remain the same, so your investment is not wasted. In fact, it's multiplied many times over. And I talked about some examples, and finally I talked about the Manufacturing Institute at ISB, what we aim to do, and finally